Alright guys, today's the day we're going to be talking about Dune Part 1. I got a suggestion in my Instagram DMs that I should talk about Dune Part 1 and do like a little breakdown of who's who and what's what, because the first movie is a little confusing. And I get it. I totally get it. It's very confusing. That's what I'm going to do today. We're going to talk about Dune. And before we talk about Dune, make sure you like, subscribe, comment who your favorite character is in Dune. Or just who your favorite actor is. Like, go on vibes and we'll talk about it, okay? Okay, so let's get into it. First of all, we're just going to get down to the nitty-gritty. Dune is a book written by Frank Herbert in the 1960s. It is a science fiction novel, very philosophical, really just a bunch of packed political intrigue, religious fanatics, and the inverse of the chosen one theory or trope, really. And then, of course, this Dune, there's been other adaptations, but this Dune that we're talking about is Dune from 2021, directed by Denis Villeneuve, and it is starring Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, Rebecca Ferguson, and the list goes on and on. This is a packed cast, guys. It is just cream of the crop. We love it. We love to see it. Okay, so what should you know before we get into, characters and what's going on? Okay, you should know that this is a colonized universe, and it is under the ruling of an empire. The Emperor Shaddam is ruling. Now, when is this? So this takes place 20,000 years into the future. But it takes place 10,191 years after the start of the empire. Now we're going to go into characters. There's a lot of characters, and I'm going to break it down for you guys, okay? Character number 1, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. I know what you guys are thinking. Who the hell is this guy? I got good news for you and bad news. This guy is someone that we will be familiar with for a while. He is also one that is the most disgusting, vile person in the known universe. He is head of House Harkonnen, one of the major houses. There's quite a few of them, but we only stay with 2. Okay, so House Harkonnen is found on Gedi Prime. That's their base. And the Baron is quite a gluttonous man. He just wants power. He wants food. He wants sex, and he wants to kill. This dude has no moral compass. He is completely he serves himself. He doesn't serve others. He's just someone that you do not want to align yourself with, okay? And yeah, so you're going to see in the movie him floating around. He has like a jetpack type thing that's hooked onto him. You'll see it in a bunch of their soldiers. Like they have it on whenever they're like around Arrakis and stuff, or you'll see it on them. He has one because he is so fat that he cannot walk. It's literally, I'm not kidding, it's literally like the humans in WALL-E. But he does have a nephew, and his nephew is named Rabban Harkonnen. Now, Rabban is also known as the Beast. He is a no moral compass like his uncle is. He has been bred for ruthlessness, for fighting, for death, all that stuff. He has he's bad, just not good, not a good guy. He is at the whim of his uncle, the Baron. He does whatever his uncle says, and he is, in the beginning, he's really upset because he's like, hey, uncle, the Emperor just told us to leave Arrakis because the Harkonnens had been on Arrakis and had controlled the flow of spice for about 80 years. And he's like, why are we told to just leave? Okay, the Emperor is just whack. Okay, we can't do this. And Baron is like, don't be so sure. Okay, I know the deets, and we're gonna get through this. We're gonna get through this. And now I make room for the House of Atreides. The leader of the House of Atreides is Duke Leto Atreides. He is so special. He's different. Okay, he is beloved by so many people. He really puts people first, and that's very interesting in the political game, because not like a lot, other houses are not like that, especially not the Harkonnens, and especially not the Emperor. Okay, and he is actually feared by the Emperor. Yes, the Emperor is afraid of how much people love Duke Leto Atreides. Okay, and so that is why there's this whole thing going on where the Duke Leto Atreides is now taking over management of Arrakis and spice flow and everything. He is going to be taking care of that, and he is told to take care of it by the Emperor. And he's like, okay, well, the Emperor told me to. I have to do it. I have to be nice. So he does. Let's just say Duke Leto Atreides is a little suspicious of the Emperor, as are we. We're very suspicious of him. Where is he? And who is he? And we don't see him. We don't see him in this movie, actually. So, Duke Leto Atreides does not go to Arrakis alone. No, he takes his concubine. Yes, his concubine, not wife. They never got married. Lady Jessica. Lady Jessica is a Bene Gesserit priestess, and she's very powerful. She is the love of Duke Leto Atreides' life, and they have a son, Paul Atreides, who is our main character. He's the person that we follow. Now, Paul is a very special being because he is the first male to be born of a Bene Gesserit. Like, he's the first male Bene Gesserit, which is a huge thing. And he also is being trained in the Mentat abilities. We'll get into that in just a second. But he's a very powerful human being, very powerful young human being. Now, next we have the Reverend Mother, who is the Reverend Mother Bene Gesserit. She is kind of buddy with the Emperor. She is a representative. Now, there are the houses, there's the Emperor. The Bene Gesserit is like their own nunnery. Basically, imagine the medieval ages. There are leaders, and they have their own priests that kind of represent them and as their voice or their go-between to God, basically. Imagine the priestesses like that, okay? So, the Reverend Mother is with the Emperor, and so she kind of is head of the Bene Gesserits. Duncan Idaho. He is under the House of Atreides. He's one of the general, commander type people underneath the House of Atreides. A great fighter and a pretty handsome man. Then there's Gurney Halleck. He is also under the House of Atreides. He is a trained fighter. He is very smart. He loves poetry. He's just a fun human being. We love him. And then there's Dr. Yue, who is also underneath the House of Atreides, and he is their royal doctor. In a way, he's trained in medical excellence, okay, and we love that. Then there's Thufir Hawat, who is basically their personal mentat. In this future, computers and AI are just no more. They got rid of them. There was kind of an uprising that happened thousands of years ago. You don't really need to know about it. All you need to know is there's no computers, there's no AI, there's no kind of droid or anything like that, okay? So humans, mainly men, actually predominantly men, are trained in the ways of computing logical stuff in their mind. That's why you'll see in the film, Thufir is his eyes glaze over milky, and he's doing calculating in his head. He's super smart, okay? And he could do it blink of an eye, just figure out all the statistics and everything. He's super trained in that, and also Paul is being trained in that, okay? Stilgar is one of the Fremen. He's one of the Fremen leaders of a siege, and he is one who agrees to meet with Leto Atreides, and they come to an agreement to basically respect each other's boundaries. Leto will not impede on their sieges, and they'll just be good, and that's really the first step in Duke Leto Atreides' plan. He wants the respect, he wants the alliance of the Fremen. He knows how good they are, he knows how talented and trained they are, and he knows that something's going on with the Emperor and with the Harkonnen. Well, at least with the Emperor, he knows something is going on. He's I really want some people on my side, so he's hoping to get the Fremen on his side, because a lot of people they underestimate the Fremen. And then we have Jamis. Jamis is another one of the Fremen. He's the one who, spoiler alert, I'm gonna spoil everything in here, okay, for Dune Part 1. Jamis dies at the end, and which is an interesting thing, and Paul has an interesting relationship with him because he sees him in his visions prior to meeting him, thinking he'll have a good relationship with him, but he ends up killing him in a duel to the death. Basically, this is a point for Paul. It's a nexus for him, and Jamis is very important to that, and we'll get more of it in Dune Part 2, don't worry. Then we have Chani, which is another Fremen, and she is the one in a bunch of Paul's visions. We get that there might be a little romance between them, who knows? Then we have Dr. Liet Kynes, who is not only the Emperor's planetologist, planet ecologist for Arrakis, she's also a Fremen. Okay, so she is wanting to help restore Arrakis back to a paradise. She is running experiments, hoping that some plants can adjust to the climate, basically try and make it flourish with greenery again. Okay, so that's the end of our basic main characters for Dune Part 1. So we're going to get on to the people, groups of people. So we're going to start with the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit are an interesting group of people because it's only women. They are priestesses. They have this breeding program It sounds very weird, but okay. They have been at the forefront of doing 10,000 years of breeding politics, basically. So they have been carefully having their women interbreed with other main politicians or other main popular figures, leaders, and crossing over, making sure they have girls so they can continue with the breeding and with keeping it in the Bene Gesserit line to one day bring forth the Kwisatz Haderach, which is basically the one who shortens the way. That's kind of roughly what it translates to. Basically what that means is the Kwisatz Haderach will be a man, will be the only man Bene Gesserit. And how that will happen is they have the high priestesses, or the Reverend Mothers. So the Reverend Mothers, it's a little confusing, but bear with me. The Reverend Mothers, to become a Reverend Mother, they drink this poison, they have the ability to control themselves down to the cell of their own bodies, to the point where they can manipulate the sex of their baby when they are pregnant with a baby, so they can have girls. Like, they can literally make themselves do that. They drink this poison, and they can compartmentalize it in their body to get rid of the poison, but the other stuff awakens their mind to be able to know the genetic materials of the women before them, of the high priestesses before them. So basically what that means is the Reverend Mothers will know only the genetic memories of the females that had come before them. But with the Kwisatz Haderach, that brings in another solution, or another factor. They will also know not just the female genetic memory before them, but also the male's genetic memory before them. So basically they will have knowledge. They will be all-knowing. They will literally be a god to be able to make their entire universe better. That's why we hear the locals of Arrakis say Lisan al-Gaib, because that's basically their version of the Kwisatz Haderach, but it's in their perspective of being like, hey, whenever a Bene Gesserit mother and a son who's a Bene Gesserit comes, they will help bring our planet to paradise. Yeah, it's so convoluted. They have literally been sneaking in these stories for thousands of years to be able to make them important in some ways. They just want power, and they will do anything at whatever cost, meaning that they will breed with leaders of entire planets, of entire universes, the Emperor. That's what they'll do. They want to have the Kwisatz Haderach for their betterment, but they also want to control him. But with Jessica, she was supposed to have a girl with Duke Leto, but because she wanted to give Duke Leto an heir, she gave him a son. And that pisses off the Reverend Mother. She's like, listen, we had a plan that you were going to have a girl, and then your girl was going to marry a Harkonnen boy, and then they were going to have a boy, and he was going to be the Kwisatz Haderach. They had that planned, but she was like, because of her selfishness and her love for Leto, she was like, I want to give him a son. On top of that, we have Paul has Mentat training, and the Mentats are supercomputers, basically. And so Paul is a supercomputer. He has the power of Bene Gesserit, meaning he could use the voice, which means like he can control people with his voice. He has visions of things in the past, maybe things in the future. And when he gets to Arrakis, it's even worse because the spice gives him visions. So like they're believing that he might be the Kwisatz Haderach. Well, at least Jessica is. And so it's getting pretty insane in here. Insane in the membrane, as I like to say. So that's the Bene Gesserit. There's a lot of convoluted things that they have in there, but the Reverend Mother is not too happy about her plan being thwarted and is not so sure that Paul is going to be the right person to carry out the plan, you know? So let's get to the Emperor. So the Emperor is quite a character. We don't see him in Dune Part 1. We do see him in Dune Part 2, but we learn in this one that he's siding with the Harkonnens because, first of all, the Harkonnens are scary people, and he's like, listen, I can deal with the Harkonnens, because he also has a horrible army of slaves and all that. Like, he is very much a not-so-good kind of person, okay? So he's afraid of Leto Atreides. He knows how kind and how much of a humanitarian Leto is. He puts people before anything else. He's like, I want to make sure people are safe. We see that in the movie. He wants his people to be safe. He wants his son to be safe. So he is afraid that people will stand behind Leto and maybe take over him. He doesn't want him to take over the Emperor's chair. Who knows? But we also see that the Emperor is also at play with the Bene Gesserit. The Reverend Mother, of course, is talking on the Emperor's behalf with the Baron, because Baron basically goes in and destroys the Atreides with the help of the Emperor's army, of course, which are also dressed in the Harkonnens' wear. by the way. They're like, he's literally being deceitful about it. So yeah, the Emperor basically does not like Leto Atreides. He's afraid of him. He's afraid of how much people love him and that he may take over the Emperor's chair. Even though Leto is not that rich, he's not like an uber powerful or uber rich person like the Harkonnens are from all the spice mining, okay? He's just beloved. And now we get the Fremen. The Fremen are the locals of Arrakis. We do have locals that live in like the big cities, or like Arrakeen, which is where the Atreides are at the first part. So the Fremen are basically like these people who live amongst the desert. They are attuned to the desert. Arrakis is their home. They're waiting for the Liana Galib. He is the one who will help them bring Arrakis back to paradise. He will bring back the greenery, the beautiful rainforest, all that stuff. That's what it's all about. They want to get rid of the sand and bring Arrakis back to its former glory type thing. But unfortunately, it was going to happen, but then people found out that there is spice in the desert, and the spice helps with, first of all, imagine like the best cocaine you ever had, okay? But it does not give you the worst down, like the worst coming down effect. It does not ruin your nose, so no nose reconstruction or anything. It does not deteriorate anything inside your body. This stuff basically is a psychedelic, and it makes you healthy. It makes you live longer, like decades longer. It also is key for intergalactic space travel, okay? It helps the Space Guild. I always want to call them the Spacing Guild. It helps the Space Guild basically chart out where to go to find other planets, stuff like that. And so the Fremen I don't think they could really care less about it, because Stilgar basically talks to them and is like, hey, yeah, just don't bother us. So they know that they're mining their spice, and they're like, you can have your spice or whatever. They're like, just get your spice and go type thing. They want peace. Basically, they don't want people to bother them. They also have sandworms there. So the sandworms, they kind of, I wouldn't say they worship the sandworms. They try and be one with the sandworms. They respect the sandworms, and they're also like, it's kind of terrifying, the sandworms, but they know how to like be with them. They also know how to ride the sandworms, which is crazy. We get a little glimpse of that in this movie at the end, so that's a little fun. But the Fremen are pretty cool people. They know a bunch of stuff. They also invented a bunch of stuff that really makes them acclimate to the desert climate, like their still suits, which basically recycles all of the like stuff that comes out of you, like sweat, pee, poop, all that. It recycles it and makes it like it cools you off. There's an aircon system in your still suit, and it also recycles it to be drinkable water. So they've thought of everything. But really the question comes down to, are the Fremen going to be actually free by the end of the story, or are they just going to be oppressed by a different group of people? Now, we have spice. I already told you the spice has health benefits, it helps with intergalactic travel, and it is only found on Arrakis. Like, literally nowhere else in the galaxy there is a spice. It's crazy. And it kind of gives a voice to how much this whole entire empire relies on spice. It gives light to how greedy people are. It also just shows the addictions of different people. In the book it shows a lot more, but really there's a bigger thing at play, and that is a holy war. Now, this will happen, and it won't be pretty. A holy war can break out, will break out pretty much from Paul's visions, of course. There's so many elements, there's so many people who rely on the spice, and there's so many people who want a certain order to the universe, and we see that order is feudalism. Feudalism is at play, and the Fremen are being targeted, and my boy Paul is like, hey, I'll fight for the Fremen. I'll be with the Fremen. Let's go with the Fremen. And we need to figure out if he's actually serious about that or if he's not. And in these visions, we kind of see what may or may not happen. We do know that some of his visions come true, and we saw that with Duncan. We saw that with the Harkonnens coming in to attack them. Really, at the end of this movie, Paul is at a crossroads. This is really a theme of fate versus free will. Will Paul become a victim of fate, or will he actually figure out what he needs to do and choose what he wants of his own free will? So that's really Dune Part 1. That's really what you need to know. There are so many forces at play: the Bene Gesserit, the Emperor, the Harkonnens, the Atreides, the Fremen. It's a science fiction story that actually can find a lot of influences from history. I mean, we get things like this from medieval feudalism. We get it from like the War of the Roses. There's a lot of influences. You can look back and you can be like, oh yeah, this reminds me of this story in history. And you're like, yep, pretty much. That's pretty much what's going on. But it's so interesting because at this point, we're not only looking at a society that is being built on the elites and then the slaves that work under them, or the lower class people, all to benefit the elites. This is also looking at the story of the chosen one and whether or not it's actually the chosen one, or will the chosen one just exploit the lower class people just like the elites did. And so it's a really interesting story. It makes you think. The book is pretty much just similar to the fact that like it's like a philosophical reading in this book. I'm telling you, it's like, if you think the movie's confusing, the book is like 10 times more confusing. But I would also suggest watching the first one maybe with subtitles, because sometimes the people speak lower. Also, it's also with mixing, because our homes aren't really mixed. They're not mixing the movies for our standard at-home viewings. They're not. It's just really sad. But anyways, so if you want a more like in-depth speaking about this book and like the movie and all that stuff, okay, so I do know that Alt Shift X on YouTube, he has an incredible book to movie like comparison for Dune Part 1, and I'll link it down below. But if you want my talking about it, just let me know whether you want the movie or the book, or maybe both. You want my own perspective, more than happy to do that. But yeah, if you like this video, like it, subscribe, comment. Comment who your favorite character is, or who your favorite actor is in these movies, and make sure you stay tuned, because I am finishing up the Crown of Midnight recap, breakdown, deep dive, all that. It's gonna be so much fun, and I will see you guys in the next one.